Good early afternoon from New York. My name is Ethan Gelber. I am one of the co-founders of Outbounding.org, and you are joining us today in a Google Plus Hangout about tourism and captive marine animals, ethics and practices. I have three panelists, participants with me here today, and we may very well be adding in a few more as we roll through, as we roll through the next hour or so, talking about issues in a large frame around the ethics and practices of enjoying wildlife as a traveler, as a tourist, and then focusing a little bit more specifically in on the practices involved, the questions that you should ask, and the answers that you should have when you, as a traveler, are interested in enjoying wildlife in different countries and in different places as you move around the planet. And then we will also probably take some time to discuss the value of taking a stand, taking a stand on whether on those ethics and practices, and the value of promoting a certain form of travel, of being an ethical traveler and championing a cause to the betterment of the travel and tourism industry and the animals that you like to appreciate when you move around the planet. Let me begin with a couple of administrative things. If you are listening in through the Google Plus Hangout event page, on the screen that you're watching, there is a little button that says Q&A. If you click that button, it opens an app that we've enabled that allows you to ask questions. To the best of my ability, I will see those questions, field those questions, and inject them into the conversation so that our participants can respond to them and so that we can get to some of the very specific issues in which you are interested. If you are following through another place of broadcast, whether it be the YouTube channel or anywhere else, and you would like to chime in not using the Q&A app, please do so using the hashtag OBFAVE, that's Outbounding Fave, OBFAVE. On Twitter, I'll be keeping an eye on that particular hashtag in Twitter, and again, to the best of my ability, folding in any of the issues and questions that you might have. Forgive me for looking around so much. I've got a lot of screens open, and I'm trying to make sure that I cover all the bases before we jump into the issues at hand. Specific to that process, I would like to set a frame, provide some important background as to why we decided to have this hangout and invite the people who are present already today and will hopefully be joining in as we move forward. I will be introducing them to you shortly, but I wanted to read what I had written on the event page so that everybody is aware of all of the different issues at hand and also the different overlapping circles about why this information is important. So forgive me for a couple of minutes while I read from the text, just so we provide that frame, and then we'll leap into the actual discussion. Begins with, I'll skip some of the introductory stuff. Let me begin by saying that in travel and tourism, we have a sector now notable for the rise of responsible and sustainable practices. More and more hotels, tour operators, and more are now keeping an eye on how they affect the environments, cultures, and economies of which they are a part. In parallel, a growing number of consumers is actively seeking experiences that simultaneously showcase and preserve our Earth's kaleidoscopic diversity. But positive and constructive change is slow, especially in the tourism industry, a word that portrays the scope of change required in the industry. And information about how to support positive developments, the best questions to ask, and most effective actions to take can be hard to find. And even when information is available, a clear way forward sometimes isn't all that clear. This is true for both well-intentioned tourism professionals and everyday travelers. Case in point is a recent decision by TBEX, or Travel Blog Exchange, the self-styled world's largest gathering of travel bloggers, writers, new media, content creators, and social media savvy travel industry professionals to include in its upcoming convention in Cancun, Mexico, the option to take part in activities that involved trained captive dolphins. This prompted outrage from many corners. Vocal opposition to inclusion of these activities offered by, forgive me for not knowing how to pronounce it, Delphinus, an operator based out of the Riviera Maya, Mexico, turned into an online row that has resulted in blog posts against TBEX's decision, TBEX's stalwart defense of its decision, a petition against TBEX's decision, currently with nearly 1,900 signatories, and even a call to boycott TBEX. What is at issue here is two traditional stances. On the one hand, as expressed by Rick Calvert, the CEO and co-founder of Blog World and New Media Expo, which operates TBEX, he said, "We think our audience should be sophisticated enough to make the decision of taking one of these tours and then writing objectively about their experience for themselves." On the other hand, we have Philip Mansbridge, the CEO of Care for the Wild International, which runs a right tourism campaign for animal-friendly tourism. He said, "We have been told by tour operators that all issues like this should be a matter of choice. They, like TBEX, say that it should be up to the tourist to decide if they want to take part in an activity. It shouldn't be the tour operator's responsibility to ban them." There is truth in that, but many people take part in these activities without knowing the truth about them. We can't count the number of people who have come to us and said that they have been somewhere like a bullfight or the Tiger Temple in Thailand and said, "Wished we'd known." Generally speaking, the debate is about whether or not to support different forms of wildlife tourism, and it hinges on how much information everyday travelers have easy access to. Those with little knowledge tend to partake more actively and indiscriminately. The more information one has, the more careful and selective one's choices of activities and operators tend to be. This is now reflected in decisions by major tour operators to shun certain types of wildlife tourism. So what should travelers know to help them make better decisions? That's why we're hosting this hangout. We want people to have as much information as possible. We did our best to bring together some of the players so that they can dig a little deeper. Unfortunately, while we have good representation on one side of the issue, on the other side, we reached out to TBEX, Delphinus, and others, but up until just a few moments ago, none responded. Given this, we will briefly address the stance TBEX has taken around its convention in Cancun, but our intention is to focus on the underpinning issues, not just fuel the debate around the TBEX specifics, including whether a boycott is the right approach to take. With all of that said, as the frame, I would like to leap right in. We'll be covering, as much as possible, three primary issues. We'll be looking at responsible and sustainable travel in general, to give you a sense of why more and more people are interested in it and adopting practices in line with it. We'll be looking at wildlife and tourism, looking specifically at the questions that travelers should ask and the information that they should be seeking so that they can make educated choices, and we'll also be looking at the value of taking a stand. To begin with responsible and sustainable travel, I'd like to introduce Diana Edelman, who is a freelance travel writer. She has a website called dtravelsround.com, and is also one of the founders of #RTTC, a weekly responsible travel Twitter chat. She'll tell us more about that and help us understand the general sense of where we're going with responsible and sustainable travel. Diana, over to you.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Unmute yourself. There you go.
Oh, I thought I did. Okay, better? Still there?
Perfect, go for it. Sorry, Diana, you muted yourself again. Start again.
Am I back now?
You're back. Go for it.
Okay, sorry about that. Thank you for having me. I have been involved in responsible travel now for almost 3 years, and actually my whole involvement in responsible tourism started when I came to Thailand. My first trip out here, I was in Chiang Mai, and I really desperately wanted to do something with elephants. And I came out here thinking, I'm going to ride an elephant, and it's going to be the most amazing experience, and who doesn't want to ride one? And I got to Chiang Mai, and I was volunteering at Elephant Nature Park, and the first thing I learned when I got here was the actual horrific abuse these animals go through, and I had never heard anything about it. At that point, I'd already been travel blogging for about 2 years, and very few people were talking about the downsides of elephant riding. They were just saying, oh, it's cool, the elephants look so happy, it's a bucket list must, and it was the Facebook photos of riding the elephants, and no one had ever really talked about what really happens. And so when I spent a week there and I learned about the realities of it, it became something so important to me, because as a travel writer, you have this platform and you have this ability to seriously impact people's travel decisions and kind of guide them along and show them what the different realities their decisions make in the world. And so after that, I kind of just took it upon myself. I moved back to Chiang Mai and actually became an elephant responsible tourism advocate here, working for Elephant Nature Park and Save Elephant Foundation. And since then, I've gotten quite involved in responsible tourism. As Ethan mentioned, I'm co-founder of RTTC, the weekly Twitter travel chat about responsible tourism, founded by myself, Jessica Festa, and Dylan Lowe, who are other travel bloggers quite passionate about responsible tourism. And it came about because the travel blogging industry has grown leaps and bounds since I started 5 years ago, since they've started, and we've seen this growing trend of people that go out and do whatever they want without taking the time to research, without thinking about what their decisions mean to the world around them. They don't necessarily think about if they go to a tiger temple, or if they go swimming with dolphins, or if they go ride an elephant, what that really means. They just go and do it because, one, it's good content in theory, and two, because it's something that sounds really fun, and you don't necessarily stop and think, well, is there abuse here? Are these animals, are they living the best lives they can, or are we actually exploiting them? And, from the animal tourism, it goes a step further, and it's going to places and looking to see, are you supporting the local businesses? Are you going to the chain hotels that have kicked locals out of their homes to demolish the land and build these properties? Are you going to places that hire locals, or going to places that bring in outsiders to work there? Are you buying local goods? Are you buying local food? Or are you going to the McDonald's down the street when you travel? The environmental impact. We had a Twitter chat a few weeks ago about golf tourism and different ways to have a sustainable golf course, and if that's even possible. And it's just, the conversation has just really, from what I've seen, has really kind of started the past few years, where people are starting to talk more and more about the influence we have as writers, the influence the travel industry has, and what to do about it. And whether we are going to go ahead and assume that a traveler is going to actually take the time to make a responsible decision, or just go, and whether the travel industry assumes that someone's going to take the time to actually do their due diligence, to read things, to learn, or they're just going to go because they read a blog post about swimming with the dolphins, or riding an elephant, or going to play with baby tigers. So it's really, really important to get people talking about this, to get that dialogue going, to engage, and to kind of, as writers, as thought leaders, essentially, in this industry, to be conscious of what we do, and be conscious of what we say, and realize that what we say is quite powerful, and that us supporting something can be really good, or can be really, really detrimental to the world itself.
Thanks for that, Diana. An impassioned plea for reason, for information sharing, information learning. No. We're, I think, most of us sold on the concept of a desire for sharing and a desire for learning. Some of the stuff that you mentioned, just to put it in more general terms, the value of responsible and sustainable tourism. There's thinking now that's more and more broad spread about what some people call it triple or quadruple bottom line thinking, and it's about how you, not you specifically, Diana, but you as a traveler, you listening and watching, how the choices that you make impact more than just one bottom line. In other words, traditional company thinking for a very long time has been oriented around profit, and at the end of the year they did their financial analysis and they had their single bottom line. But more and more there's thinking about triple or quadruple bottom line that includes impact and effect on long-term sustainability with regard to culture, to nature, to animals, to and to the economy, the surrounding economy, how you spend your money, with what kinds of organizations you spend your money. In other words, are you staying in an international resort owned by offshore owners, or are you staying in a local property owned by a local family and feeding the local economy? These kinds of things all impact the long-term sustainability of the travel and tourism industry as it exists today, but also of the planet in different ways. And Diana has given some very specific and concrete examples, given her past experiences and the efforts that she's making to help people understand how and why they should be more conscious. Do you want to have a quick follow-up thought on that before we turn to Chris and Allison, who are with us here today?
I pretty much, you summed it up pretty well, I think.
All right, thanks, Diana. If you can, hold on, because I'm sure we're going to want to hear any other input you might have. Sure. Also with me here today are two experts. Allison Hood is the Rescue and Care Director of the Born Free Foundation, and Chris Pitt is the Campaigns and Communications Manager for Care for the Wild International. I quoted the CEO from his company and mentioned the Right to Tourism campaign that they've been working on for quite a while to help people understand and make the right decisions about issues involving wildlife, wildlife watching, wildlife appreciation, and tourism. Chris, since I've just given you a bit more of an introduction, why don't we start with you? You want to tell us a little bit about what you've been doing and also try to help us frame an understanding of the kinds of questions people should ask and the kinds of information that they should seek when looking to understand more about how to appreciate wildlife in an ethical, responsible fashion. Allison, I will come back to you.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, it's an interesting subject, and it's a difficult one as well. I mean, I think we all here on this panel and a lot of people...
Chris, are you there?
I am. Can you hear me?
Great, thanks.
Can you hear me okay? Can anyone hear me?
Yes, we can. There might be a slight delay, but keep going. All right, all good. Keep on going.
Okay, yeah, I think there's a Atlantic delay going on. Yeah, it's an interesting debate because we all think, those of us who are involved in this, think it's quite obvious. You know, you see a slow loris on someone's back in Thailand, and we would go, that slow loris shouldn't be there. We know that that slow loris has been taken out from its home. Its parents have probably been killed. It's had its teeth clipped. Sorry about the phone. It's had its claws clipped. It's been kept in a box. It just shouldn't be there. Other people, very intelligent, normal people, will see that slow loris and go, "Oh, cute, Facebook photo," and there's your selfie. It doesn't mean that they're, you know, bad people. They are probably most likely animal lovers, just like the people who go to the tiger temple or similar places in Thailand because they want to sit on a tiger and have a photograph of the tiger. They will say that they are animal lovers. So who is it for us to say, actually, you're harming them? So what we're trying to do with the Right Tourism campaign is basically just give that information, put it in one place. If you're going somewhere, you can do a country search. Wherever you're going, you can look in there and go, okay, what should I be looking out for? It'll tell you the highlights of the wildlife there, what you can really see, what the best places to go to, but it'll also tell you the things to watch out for. So in South Africa, obviously amazing wildlife there, but if you're offered a chance to cuddle a cub, a lion cub, just think about it for a minute. Just think about why that cub is there. What's it doing? What's it going to do once you've cuddled it. When it's too old to be cuddled, where's that cub going? If you're going to Spain, and when you're there, you get caught up in the whole sangria-driven drive to go and see a bullfight because it's cultural. It's cultural, it must be okay. Well, just because something is cultural, it doesn't mean it's okay. Again, you should look into it, and you need to make your own decisions. So, again, the website is trying to give information. It's trying to help people think about things for themselves, and it's also campaigning on the issues where we feel really strongly about to try and sort of change some minds.
Thanks for that, Chris. We'll come back. I just want to make sure that we get Alison to introduce herself and to tell us a little bit about her work and help us to understand some of the thinking behind what she does when in the promotional work that her organization does, and help us to begin to understand some of the questions that travelers should ask and the actions that they should take in order to understand how to be the best traveler that they can be. Alison, welcome.
Hi, thank you, Nathan. And thanks to Diana and Chris. I think you've both outlined or set the scene quite clearly there, and we obviously very much share the same thoughts as Care for the Wild on this issue. And basically, when people go on holiday, we want them to have a fantastic time. That's the main purpose of a holiday. But then at the same time, we want to ensure that there is minimum impact or negative impact on wild animals, and that people remain safe, and health and safety issues are covered at the same time. And we've worked on several different issues with this. We have for about 15 years now run a campaign called Travelers Animal Alert. And this is a forum for people to, when they go on holiday, if they see anything they're concerned about in terms of wild animals, domestic animals being treated unwell, or they've got any concerns whatever, please let Born Free Foundation know of these concerns. We will then do what we can to follow these up with the authorities. And admittedly, a lot of this is a case of just continuously raising these issues with the people in charge, and in the hope that over the years that things will sort of start to shift and start to change. Occasionally we can have a direct impact where we're able to, say, rescue a wild animal from a very difficult situation. We did it recently with 2 dolphins that were rescued from appalling captive conditions in Turkey. We've done it with primates, use of photographers' props, lots of specific animals. We very much care about the welfare of the individual animal in these circumstances. Be that a cheetah that has just managed to sort of bring down a kill in Africa, and you get the tour buses crowding around it, and it frightens her off. Right through to, as Diana has said as well, the use of elephants for temple rides, use of elephants in circuses, anything like that. We care very much about the individual animal throughout all these issues. But we have also, over the last few years, been working with APTA and have helped to produce a set of guidelines for what we see as responsible tourism, and also these guidelines will help suppliers sort of question the different facilities they use, be it a dolphinarium, be it someone taking people for rides on donkeys, whatever. It's a set of questions that APTA have that they can then sort of basically police their suppliers, so to speak. Many of the issues that this covers are issues that Born Free ourselves are opposed to, but we very much work on the principle as well that we recognise there are many activities out there that will continue for quite a while. While they are continuing, we want to ensure the best possible welfare standards for the animals involved, and then with a hope on such issues as, say, dolphinarium in particular, that these practices are eventually sort of phased out.
Thank you, Alison. That's great. One of the questions that has just come through is sort of specific to what sort of specific to what you just addressed, Katka has asked, how can you tell whether an attraction's first aim is to help or rehabilitate wildlife versus solely designed for profit? You've talked about how working with suppliers and setting standards and criteria is important. But is there any way for the traveler, that's the work that you're doing on the industry side, but is there a way for the traveler who is coming at this from the outside, who doesn't know about credentials and accreditation and standards, to look at a facility and understand whether or not it is primarily focused on the kinds of behaviors and activities that you're promoting versus something that is more purely for profit? And obviously there's going to be a lot of gray area, but is there something that you can suggest? And Chris, I'll come to you with the same question in just a moment.
Yes, this very much sort of reflects the argument as well between commercial facilities like zoos and sanctuary facilities that we would support, and often sanctuary facilities are open to the public for them to go and see. And so I think the questions that can be raised from that from the public going to these facilities are, you know, do the animals obviously look in good condition? Have they got access to fresh water? Are they allowing these animals to breed in captivity? Are they allowing people to have their photograph taken with these animals? You know, is there interaction between the public and the animals? Are they being allowed to feed the animals? That sort of thing. And a lot of that sort of will happen in commercial setups, but within sort of proper sanctuaries, there shouldn't be you know, breeding. There shouldn't be photographic opportunities, and people shouldn't be, you know, playing with the animals or feeding the animals.
Thanks. Chris, do you have any particular thoughts about that question, about how the consumer is going to be able to differentiate? And everybody hang on there. There is the Atlantic delay, so he'll chime in when he's able.
Yeah, well, everything Alison just said, we agree with, obviously. I suppose just the only additional thing is, obviously, we're trying to kind of get people to understand these things before they go, if possible, rather than finding out when they're there. So that's why we're trying to, for our website and, you know, what work Born Free do, the work that Diana and the other bloggers do, is so important, because hopefully people now do check before they go. Check online, you know, what do other people say about it, you know, and if there's a lot of negative comments about the condition of the animals, or like Alison said, if you can go there for you can go and couple a cub and it says it's a sanctuary, then it's not. So there are things that you can look out for before you go, in addition to what you can find when you're there.
Thanks for that, Diana. I know you also work in the space. Is there something you wanna add in on that point?
Actually, I would love to. I think it's really important. You know, the power of the public is quite strong, and you know, working at Elephant Nature Park, TripAdvisor can make or break a lot of places, and a lot of times I'll go through and read reviews for other animal attractions in Thailand and beyond, and a lot of times people go ahead and kind of personify these animals and say, oh, well, this animal looks really happy. And I think it's really important to go beyond what you're reading on TripAdvisor and what you're reading from the general public, and really digging and checking what experts are saying, reaching out to these sanctuaries, these animal attractions, and asking for information. You know, how transparent are these places? Are they, both Allison and Chris had some really good points. Those are all really important things, and I think so many times people just kind of forget that. But it truly is just, it's digging a little bit deeper before you go, and not just assuming that what you read from non-experts is fact, because chances are it's not.
Thanks, Diana. Katka followed up with another thought, which is sort of related. She asked, while I don't advocate for things like zoos or aquariums, are there any permissible excuses for animals to be held in captivity? For example, when their lives would be in danger, out in the wild due to poachers, deforestation, etc. For me, that's a question that answers itself. I think we are able to provide security and sanctuary for animals, but the primary question here is whether or not injecting the human element is something that is allowed. Chris or Allison, do you want to? I mean, that's just my having read now a fair bit of stuff about this. Do you want to? Is there something you want to add to that? And then I do want to move on to some other questions that touch upon these issues. Allison, your mic is live, so why don't you chime in?
Yeah, no, I think yes, there are. You can go to see animals in sanctuaries. I think that there is a role there as long as it's done responsibly. But I think just picking up on the point of putting animals, say, in sanctuaries because of concerns about deforestation or ivory trade and so on, I think the focus there needs to be trying to conserve those in their natural habitat. So, sort of summing that up, there is lots of opportunities for people to see wild animals in their natural habitat, and hopefully some of the income from that tourism will go towards protecting those animals and their habitat. But then at the same time, there are captive facilities, and we ourselves would only recommend genuine wildlife sanctuaries that have rescued individuals that they are either trying to care for or rehabilitate and release.
Thanks, Allison. Chris, do you want to add to that? That's a longer delay than usual. Chris, oh, there you go.
No, that's all. Said it all.
All right, covered that particular point. There's a question that was asked here by Sonia. Does anyone know of a country or destination that has put policies into place in regards to recreational swimming with captive dolphins and other marine life? What are some of the basic directives? I'd like to take a moment just to present something that I think is important. We had invited and thought we might be joined by a woman named Marilyn Gomez Pozos, who is the federal deputy for Jalisco in Mexico. She represents the Movimiento Ciudadano, the citizens movement. She is an animal welfare activist and politician who is leading legislation that was introduced early this month of July in Mexico against the use and exploitation of animals in Mexico, particularly in circuses and in marine shows. Her current initiative seeks to ban the use of marine mammals in entertainment and introduce more effective regulations on animal treatment, conditions, and commercial breeding. She has argued that, and this is a quote, dolphinariums appeared in Mexico in the 1970s, and since then the industry has been sheltered by the absence of legal norms and is favored by the ineffectiveness of laws in the area. She has pointed out that the official industry standards and regulations do exist, but they were established by the business interests themselves. And so she considers these regulations covering such things as the size and conditions of pools, the breeding and transfer of the animals, and other conditions to be lax, ineffective, and favorable to the industry at the expense of animal welfare. It should be pointed out that if her measure does go through in Mexico, Mexico will not be alone. India became the largest country to ban the practice last May, following Costa Rica, Chile, Croatia, Cyprus, Hungary, Slovenia, and Switzerland, and other countries like Greece and Belgium have banned performing animal shows, citing poor animal welfare standards in many of them. So, Sonia, yes, there is quite a bit of action going on. There is quite a bit of activism going on, and it seems to be getting some traction. Allison or Chris, do you want to weigh in on that particular point? Do you work at the country level with governments, or specifically with specific animal marine parks, or where do you find the most action? Where do you find the most traction in the actions that you're taking?
Sorry. Shall I jump in, or? it's frozen.
Yes, Alison, please do.
Okay. Yeah, no, we work on many different levels, from the individual dolphinarium, individual animal, right through to legislative issues. And we actually worked on with colleagues in India from FIAPO last year, helping secure the ban there on dolphins in captivity. We have a focus at the moment on Europe, sort of working within the European Union and the legislation there. I mean, there is legislation in Europe in terms of the European Zoo Directive, which covers many dolphinarium, but it's how that is then interpreted and enacted within the law. So we do a lot of work on that, obviously trying to ensure that it's interpreted strictly and you know, with the animals' welfare as the prime sort of motivation for all this. So because it's such a big issue, we'll work at the government level, at the legislative level, but then also where we can, we will focus on the individual, both because obviously we care about the individual animal, but also I think in terms of trying to sort of generate support from the public and to get this issue out there and talked about. It is the plight of the individual that captures people's imagination. You know, be that Lolita at the moment, or be it Tillicum, or Morgan, who's in Laura Parquet in Tenerife. It's these individual animals and their stories and what they've been through, which helps hopefully generate some movement for the bigger picture as well.
Thank you for that. We're going to move on to the next topic, but before so, Chris, do you want to weigh in on that particular thought? Do you work with governments or specific marine parks or animal parks, and where do you find the most traction, but also the most resistance?
We have projects around the world. We're not as big an organisation as Born Free, who do amazing work on this. So we have some projects that includes such as rescuing former dancing bears in Greece and working with projects in Thailand around the world. So we kind of put a lot of our small but hopefully effective methods in place in terms of campaigning and petitioning and basically working through the public pressure route. We've just done actually a petition with Born Free and FADA, a Spanish group, on the photo prop industry. That's the having photographs taken with wild animals in Mexico. And they are starting to look at their laws there because of that, I believe. So that's kind of where we, as a smaller organisation, but where we can try to really get people power involved, that's where we work.
Great, thank you for that, Chris. We're now going to move on to the next big topic, which is the value and importance of taking an ethical stand. Obviously, we've had presentations here about the values of travelers and tourists understanding, making educated decisions about the choices they make when they're on the road. We've looked at some of the specifics related to appreciation and enjoyment of animals within the travel and tourism industry. And going back a little bit to what Diana brought up at the very beginning about the strength of media, especially bloggers, in presenting what they do about the travels that they do and how that impact can change the way travelers travel, I'd like to welcome Mr. Michael Huxley, who is the founder and editor of a website called Bemused Backpacker. He is the instigator of a bit of a dust-up that happened that has been associated with TBEX about TBEX's decision to include activities that involve swimming with, touching, and kissing dolphins. He has a very principled position that he has taken and also been very vocal about that. And the dust up has actually grown into a bit more of a dust storm, and since then, with, like I mentioned at the beginning, petitions and boycotts and such. Before we get to any of the specifics of the petitions and boycotts, and in particular, because I do hope that we will be joined by the CEO of the company that manages TBEX, I'd like to introduce Mike and give him a chance to talk a little bit about what he sees as the value of bloggers and travel journalists and other content creators in taking an ethical stance on issues around which there is a lot of misunderstanding and conflict. Mike, you wanna introduce yourself and share some thoughts?
Yeah, hi. You say it like that, you make it sound as if it was all my fault. Yeah, basically when we talk about new travel media and bloggers, I think it's important, first of all, like a lot of the issues have been touched on already, but I think it's important to say just how much of an influence that we actually have now. Independent travel writers and travel bloggers have command huge audiences now, much more than they did 5 years ago, 10 years ago. I mean, when I first started backpacking, there was no such thing as a travel blog, really. And I think in that sense now, a lot of travellers, a lot of tourists, they look to us to provide them with information. They look to us to provide them with inspiration and leadership, really. And I think in that respect, we've got an absolute responsibility to act and write about our travels in a responsible way. We've got an absolute responsibility to ensure that what we write about, that what we promote, is ethical, is responsible, and in particular, case of wildlife tourism. I think, as has been touched on before, a lot of people, a lot of travellers and tourists who go out there, they're not always fully aware of the full implications of what they're doing. They're not always aware of the full of the whole issue, really, about the actions that they take. So if someone goes out there and decides to go on an elephant trek or swim with dolphins, they might think that it's an amazing experience. It's it's a once in a lifetime experience to interact with animals that they absolutely love, and some people really do feel passionately about protecting these animals, but don't understand that what they're doing is harming them in any way. And I think, I mean, for me, particularly when I first started traveling, I wasn't fully aware of all the issues surrounding elephant trekking and the potential harm I could be doing to them. And to my eternal shame now, I did go on an elephant trek. At the time, I thought it was just a case of getting up close and interacting with an animal that I really loved. But now I have become more aware of the issues. I do know more about what abuses that that the elephants have to deal with to fuel that industry. And my practices have changed since knowing that. And I think that is the power that travel blogs and new media have got. We've got that power to get that information out to people. We've got that responsibility to say to people, look, it might be a once in a lifetime experience for you. It might be something that you really want to do, but this is the reality of the situation. This is the facts of the situation presented, not just as my opinion, but also backed up by scientific fact, by professionals in that field. And I think when people when travellers and tourists look to us, they do they are able then to make that fully informed decision on what ethical choices to make in such situations. And I think because of that, we do have a responsibility to write in an ethical way, to act in an ethical way towards our audiences. And I think in that respect, a lot of what Care for the Wild are doing with the Right Tourism campaign is absolutely fantastic, because they're saying, you know, these practices are bad, these practices are good, and they're trying to promote the good practices wherever possible. And when people are armed with that information, I think then they can make their own choices, fully informed choices, and then hopefully the bad practices out there in the travel industry will eventually be petered out as people do start moving towards more ethical choices.
Thanks, Mike. Excuse me. That gives us a great perspective on where you think travel writers, pardon me, where you think travel writers and travel bloggers stand. We talked at the beginning about how tour operators are also beginning to take a stance. STA recently made the decision no longer to provide any quote-unquote unethical animal practices on any of its tours. G Adventures and Intrepid have been fairly vocal about the kinds of actions that they're going to take involving tours, with their tours involving any animal practices. We've just been joined by Rick Calvert, who is the CEO of the company that manages T-Bex and has been at the heart of this little firestorm. He has been staunch in his defense of the decision to include the dolphin, the activities that involve swimming with and touching dolphins, because it was an activity provided by a local operator, and as T-Bex represents the interests of the destination to travel bloggers, it was not in the interest of T-Bex to make a decision against including that activity. Before I turn to Rick, and Rick, you'll be able to correct any of my misrepresentations of your position, Mike, I do wanna get you to weigh in on some of the specifics of your vision of why you believe that not just travel bloggers and media, but also industry needs to take a stance on this particular position. Try to keep it brief because we're running out of time, and I want to make sure Rick gets heard.
Yes, well, basically, I think, like we just said, that a lot of the arguments that have been put forward by tour companies, tour groups, travel industry professionals aren't making these ethical choices. To be honest, I don't think they just don't wash really now, because like we've said already, a great many tourists and travellers, often through no fault of their own, they're not always fully aware of the issues surrounding the decisions that they make in the tourism trade. They don't always know all the facts, so I think it's our responsibility as travel writers. I think it's the travel industry's responsibility, whether it's a tour operator, whether it's a conference, where it doesn't matter what it is. It's our responsibility to act in a responsible way and make an ethical stance and say to people, look, this is the ethical stance that we're taking on this. This is the right way. And then people who look to us for guidance, who look to us to make these decisions and provide them with information and tours and everything else within the tourism industry, they can see the stance that we're making and hopefully take that stance alongside us. But without us doing that, they don't always have the opportunity to have that information to hand when they make the decision.
Okay, thanks, Mike. Rick, over to you. Let me just preface this by saying we also did invite the specific tour operator to represent their position. One of the big missing pieces of information is the specifics of their activities and how they and their stance on the sustainability and on the sustainability of their activities and the conservatorial value of what they do. That is a big missing piece. I recognize that. I acknowledge that, and it's unfortunate that it's missing. And Rick, I'm not asking you to represent them, not by any stretch of the imagination, but I think it's great that you've joined us here. Thank you for that, and let us know, please. I mean, if I misrepresented you, please correct those misrepresentations and let us know where you stand on all of this.
Yeah, thank you for having me. I guess the one big misrepresentation is that we represent the tourist board or the tour operator in any way. We do not. TBEX as an event is an educational conference for the tourism industry, for travel bloggers, travel writers, travel journalists from new media and traditional media. And we also educate people from the travel industry as well on how to use these new media tools, how to interact with travel bloggers. We're educating travel bloggers on how to interact with the industry. What we are not is a consumer event. We're not promoting anything at TBEX to any tourist. All the people who attend TBEX are industry professionals, or at least they want to be an industry professional. And Diana said earlier on that as a travel writer, you have this tremendous ability to impact people's decisions. And that's been our position all along. The tours that were offered were from local tour operators in Cancun, and that is a significant part of their tourism industry there. And for us to just ignore it, that it doesn't even exist, even though they wanted to offer these tours, I think that is unethical on our part, and I don't think it's doing a disservice. No blogger has to attend any of those tours, although the tours that were offered are completely full. Any blogger that does attend those tours can say whatever they want. They can say that they're horrible, you shouldn't do them. They can say, you know what, they're better than I expected, the animals are treated humanely, and that's not our ethical job. We're not a political advocacy organization. Our job is to educate travel writers and the travel industry, and the travel writers' job is to educate consumers. If we banned these tours at TBEX, no consumer would ever know it. So what is the effect of that? There is none. So that's been our position. And by the way, I know there are no bloggers here that have taken the other position. However, I spoke to numerous bloggers about it. Some people have said we should boycott TBEX. No speakers, no sponsors, no attendees have boycotted the event. So, and that's been my position all along, is that there's not unified agreement on the fact that we should discontinue the fact that these tours are there, these optional tours, or the ethical standards of those tours. So that's been our position. I don't think a small group of people should be able to tell everybody else the way that they should act ethically. They should all be able to make that decision, and as educated tourism writers, travel writers, they should be able to educate the public on the way they believe.
Thanks, Rick. I imagine there might be someone interested in responding to that. Anybody want to jump first? Mike and Diana, I know you've actually engaged quite a bit, so I encourage Allison and Chris to weigh in here as well before you jump in, all right?
Can I jump in?
Please, Chris.
Well, firstly, thanks for coming on, Rick. Appreciate that. I think just a couple of points. You said that you were an educational conference, but that doesn't necessarily mean you have to take part in an activity. If I was at school and being taught about stealing, I wouldn't expect the teacher to go off and steal something to show me how to do it. You can talk about these things. You don't have to show them or take part in them. You could have had a workshop or something to talk about these issues, to highlight them. you said to go to Cancun and ignore these activities would have been unethical. I don't think that's really stands up. I think to go to Cancun and ignore them would have made a point. I mean, if you personally think we're not comfortable with these activities, you don't have to do them. So to ignore them would have been making a point. And you also said that if you'd have not gone, if you'd have banned these things, no one would know. Well, that's not strictly true either. I mean, there's been a lot of press about STA Travel pulling out of SeaWorld, pulling out of elephant treks. There's a lot of media picking up on the fact that these things are changing. If another big tour operator pulls out of SeaWorld or does something like that, it will be noticed. So if you took a stand and said, we're going to do this, but we're not going to go to these activities, it would have been noticed. And I think the final point is, pushing it slightly, I'm sure you might not like it, but in the past there have been all sorts of practices that have been since banned. You could say bear baiting, for example. Now at the time, for a long time, bear baiting would have been perfectly acceptable. People wouldn't have thought about it. Then for a while, a lot of people started thinking, hang on, this isn't right. We shouldn't be doing this. And then they might have said, well, don't go to bear baiting anymore. And there would have been some people who said, well, it's freedom of choice. You know, we're not going to ban it. It's up to other people to go. If people want to go, that's fine. And that's kind of where we are with this, I think, at the moment. I think the scientific evidence and public opinion is moving against dolphin shows, dolphinariums. The evidence shows that we shouldn't be keeping these animals that should live in an ocean. We shouldn't be keeping them in a swimming pool. We shouldn't be using techniques to train them to do tricks. It's past its time, and it will be great if organisations like yourself would take a stand and go, okay, we understand this and we're not going to do it.
Again, if I could respond to that.
Yep, absolutely, Rick.
So, again, we're not a consumer event. We're not a tour operator. So no consumer would know if the tour was included or not. Unlike a tour operator who cancels tours, that's going to be known by consumers who take those tours. The people who take tours at TBEX are travel writers. It's part of the event is taking tours of whatever destination we go to. To say not including that, we should talk about that, but not include that experience, that's not how TBEX operates. I heard somebody say that keeping any animal in captivity was unethical. I know that we've had zoo tours at previous TBEX events. I know there are people who feel very passionate about that, and I applaud that, and I encourage that. And I think they should write about it and raise awareness. And we're not upset that people use this as an opportunity to raise awareness. I think that's a good thing. We encourage that discussion. As long as the discussion is respectful and courteous, we're here to engage with you, just as I've engaged with Matt on his blog, and Nomadic Matt, who actually was the first person who brought this up. I've spoke to him on the telephone, and I met with him personally in Las Vegas last week, and it's been cordial the entire time. So, again, for us to ban these tours would remove an opportunity for travel writers to make the choice on their own. Every one of them can say, I chose not to go on that tour for an ethical reason. That's an opportunity to educate. Some can choose to go on those tours. And again, that's an opportunity to educate. Far more people than we ever would by not including these tours. The attendees at TBEX have a gigantic audience, and they're going to reach a whole lot more people than we are. And the fact that we included these tours, you've reached 1,900 people who've done the signature, mostly consumers, by the way, not travel writers, that would have never been reached if this didn't happen. So I would say we've done our job, what we are supposed to do, and we'll continue to do that.
Can I jump in really quick?
Yep, I also want to make sure I get to Allison, who's champing at the bit there. Quickly, Diana.
Okay, I just want to just quickly,
you
know, Rick, you mentioned that this obviously is not a consumer conference, but you talk about ethics. But don't you kind of feel that as as a conference for travel bloggers, for travel writers, that the ethics of responsible tourism is important? Or are you literally going to leave it up to every travel blogger to come to learn about responsible tourism on their own, or to actually, or, you know, by not talking about that aspect of it, by saying it's up to you, you're literally turning a whole side of you're ignoring responsible tourism, essentially, and saying that when you're talking about ethics, that the responsible tourism isn't an ethical question. It's just go do it. We trust you to take your own judgment. You're going to tell the consumers whatever. But if we're not coming out and saying, you know what, responsible tourism is a very real thing and it's very important. And as a travel blogger, there are ethical standards that maybe you should think about. And I feel like that's just being completely pushed to the wayside.
So it's a very fair question. And no, responsible tourism is an important thing for us to talk about, and sustainable tourism is an important thing for us to talk about at TBEX. And we absolutely will talk about it at the Cancun conference in particular. This whole episode brought this to light, that it was an important thing that we should discuss. I even offered Nomadic Matt the opportunity to address it as a keynote speaker if he wanted to. Unfortunately, the schedule didn't work out. So we're not ignoring this at all. We're confronting it head on. But the question is, where is the line and what's ethical and what's not ethical? Obviously, everyone here agrees that these tours are unethical, but it is not at the moment a mainstream opinion where everyone agrees with you. Otherwise, there would be more people joining the chorus of people who are saying we should cancel these tours. They're just not. It's just a fact. And so it's okay to continue to advocate on behalf of it. But again, I don't think it's our job, and I think we would be doing a disservice to tell travel writers we're not offering those tours, don't talk about that subject, or don't go see that for yourself and report on it. I don't understand how that is fulfilling our responsibility to our constituency, which is travel writers.
Thanks, thanks, Rick. Alison, you've been patiently waiting.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, Rick. Just to sort of follow up on a few sort of points there, just 2 quick points, because I think much of it's been covered already. I think TBEX, as an event organizer or whatever, could make a stand against practices that they didn't think should be supported. Whether I don't think you have to be a supplier or whatever. I think, you know, as an event organizer, a stand could have been made against something. But I mean, obviously, your opinion is that there isn't enough. This is still an issue that is very supported. The sort of swimming with dolphins is still a very top of the to-do list for many people. But it is also very well recognised now that it's a very controversial issue. There's obviously just been the huge Virgin Unite meeting to look at this issue, so it is on the table. It isn't a sort of clean, fully accepted practice. It is being discussed, and I just wanted to ask if there was any opportunity within your conference. I understand you want to put all the issues out there. Is there any opportunity within that for a presentation to be made explaining this issue, which we believe is a very hot issue at the moment, for this to be put forward to the people who come to this conference?
Yes, is the short answer.
Mm-hmm.
And again, issues that are controversial, in my opinion, are things we should talk about, and that we should address head on. So,
as you say, you're going to have quite a big audience there of people who can be influential.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, I mean, obviously, you know, to us it'd be great if someone like TBEX or whatever made a stand and said, you know, please don't support elephant rides or swimming with dolphins or captive, you know, the use of captive animals within tourism. I know that that's a long way down the line for many people at the moment, but if there's an opportunity to, especially in Cancun, because Cancun is an area where we as an organisation receive quite a lot of complaints from tourists, because obviously it's a very popular destination. So we get lots of complaints from tourists who go there about different issues. So I don't know how we could sort of move that forward if it's possible to have some sort of stage there to a degree where we could present our concerns about animals in tourism.
I'd absolutely be willing to discuss that with you directly when we're done with this chat.
Okay.
So.
Thank you.
Great. We've heard from almost everybody. Mike, do you want to? I mean, everybody in response to Rick's initial statement. Mike, do you want to weigh in with anything?
Yeah, just a few issues really. I mean, you said earlier, Rick. I mean, first of all, I just want to state that I hope everything I've said has been cordial as well. You know, I mean, I've spoke with Matt Ketness as well, and you know, I don't want anything to be considered not cordial in what we're saying. I know it's a debate that raises a lot of people's tensions, but I just want to state that everything that I'm saying, I hope anyway, is being taken as cordial. But first of all, I just want to make the point that you say you're not a political organisation. You're there to educate, and I completely understand that. But then, on the same token, Star Travel aren't a political organisation. Intrepid Adventures aren't a political organisation. G Adventures aren't a political organisation, and they're all taking the stand that they're not going to they're not participating in any of these unethical or what can be seen as unethical trips in the future. Now, you say that it's not a majority voice at the moment. That's another thing I take an issue with as well, because again, to use those three same examples, Star, Intrepid, they are huge companies. They are leaders within the gap year industry and tourism industry. They're all taking this stand. There are a lot of bloggers. You say that the tours are full up, and you're getting a lot of bloggers who are still attending who don't take this view, and that's fair enough. I can understand that. But on the same token, there is a lot of support for this side of the argument as well. We're getting, I mean, I'm personally getting a lot of comments, a lot of emails, basically saying that the people didn't know about the issues surrounding the dolphins and T-Bex before this issue was raised, and thanking me for it, because now they've been able to educate themselves a little bit on the issue, and also take their own stance, make their own decision based on that. And I think, going back to a point I made earlier about travellers and tourists in general taking our cues, taking our lead in a lot of respects, I think travel bloggers and travel writers are just the same in that respect. If they see industry professionals, industry leaders not taking a stand, then they're going to assume that there's nothing wrong with the choices that they're making as well. They'll just assume that the practices that they're promoting and tacitly supporting by attending are okay, when a lot of the times that just isn't the case. And I think that's why, like I said earlier, a lot of industry leaders, conferences, tour groups, tour professionals, it doesn't matter, anyone within the tourism industry has to take the stand. We have a responsibility to take this ethical stand and state that, okay, this is our stand, this is the choice that we're making not to promote it, and you are tacitly promoting these practices by, first of all, promoting them on your pre-Bex tours, and also by not taking a stand. You are saying to a lot of people who don't know the full issues surrounding it that this is okay because you're supporting it. So I think you are, as T-Bex, are included in the same category as Star Travel, as Intrepid Tours, as tour leaders, and we've all got a responsibility to be to lead by example, really.
So my distinction between the tour operators that you mentioned and TBEX is that they're B2C. They do business with consumers. We do not. And again, they're making a stand in a way that they think serves their consumers. That's good, and that's responsible for them to do. We are not a B2C event. We are a B2B event. We treat travel bloggers and travel writers as travel professionals. The entire mission of TBEX is to represent travel bloggers as professionals to the tourism industry, which for us, this is one of the objections that travel bloggers have all the time. They're not taken seriously. They're seen as less than a professional travel writer who writes for a traditional media publication. We're advocating that that's not correct. Travel bloggers are the same as professional travel writers and have other benefits that you can't get from traditional media. So to say they're too responsible to understand this issue, we will be the judge of what is right and what is wrong, is not serving our mission. It is not doing a service to travel bloggers. And again, if we were to only offer tours at TBEX that were my personal preference or fell with my own political beliefs, they'd be completely different than the tours that we offer now. That's not our job. Our job is to educate people about practices. It's a very broad set of things that we talk about at the show, from building your audience, monetizing your content, writing better content, ethical practices, and that does include sustainable tourism, absolutely. But again, for everybody that agrees with you, Michael, I would say there are just as many who disagree, if not more. I mean, and for us to say, well, Michael and Diana and these travel bloggers on this side think this way, therefore all travel bloggers have to think that way, we TBEX have decided, I don't think is doing our job. I think that's a violation of our job to represent all travel bloggers, not just one group who feels passionately about one subject. If we did that, we wouldn't have any tours to offer at TBEX, because I guarantee you almost every tour at TBEX offends somebody about something.
Okay, sorry, Rick, I need to cut you off there for a second. I'm not, if people want to continue to discuss, I think it would be great. There are a couple of questions, Rick, that I would like to ask you. That was more of a clarification point, because although you have clarified in your written statements, I think it would behoove you to make one quick clarification here. Before that, it is after midnight in Thailand, and in Southeast Asia, where Diana is located, and I want to thank her for being here, and let her go since her eyes are droopy and she deserves some sleep before her full day of work tomorrow. Thank you, Diana. Thank you for presenting your opinion. Thank you for sharing your thoughts.
Can I say one more thing really quick, just in response to Rick before I go?
All right.
Did you get that?
Super, super, super fast.
I respect everything you've said, Rick, but I understand what you're saying. Travel is a growing profession. However, I think a lot of the travel bloggers that come to TBEX are newer travel bloggers, and they're looking for guidance along the way. And I think a lot of the people, and this isn't a slam against new travel bloggers, I respect what they're doing, but I've also learned and seen, working in the PR side of it as well, that they want, a lot of travel bloggers these days want the free things, and that's what's more important to them than anything else. And I just think, as I leave, my experience has been very much working with people that they say, I want free things, how do I get free things? And they don't, there's not that consideration of the other part of it. And I just wanted to just make that statement, because this is a newer industry, and people are kind of learning as they go, but I think it's important to realize that we all have that, you're a thought leader, and by coming out of the gate and saying, journalists are upheld to certain ethical standards. And yes, this is my opinion. Yes, I am quite passionate about responsible tourism. But why are we not saying there should, it's up to each travel blogger to be this professional person when it's not clearly laid out what that is. And I'll stay to listen, but then I have to go. And I'm sorry, and thank you.
Rick, I'm also going to lump another quick thought on you so that you can answer that, because it's kind of in the same space, and I want to make sure we get to a couple of questions. I do recognize that we run over time, but I still see that we have an audience, and you're all hanging in there, so let's just get to these couple of last issues. A couple of questions have come in about your decision to go with the specific operator that you did. And I'm not saying that you did. I know I've read your statements, and I understand why you ended up with the operator that you did. There's a question about whether or not there was pressure put on you by the DMO, or whether or not you looked more specifically at other operators and why you decided to go with the one you did versus others that might be more responsible in their practices. I'm laying the questions as they've been asked. I know what your answer will be, and I want to give you an opportunity to respond to those, but I also want to give you a chance to respond to Diana, conscious of the fact that we have run over time, but if everyone is comfortable with staying, let's keep at it.
First to Diana, again, thank you, Diana, because she's been respectful from the very beginning and very passionate about her position, and I absolutely understand how she feels and how she believes, and I applaud her position. So to answer her specific question, absolutely, there are travel bloggers, just like there are journalists who are not writing for the right reasons, and your specific charge was that some bloggers just want free stuff. No doubt that's true. I got in trouble for writing a blog post last year at ITB called "You're Not a Travel Blogger," directed specifically at people who just go and ask for free stuff and don't do what they say they're going to do, and say glowing reviews about people because they gave them a good trip, or even try to blackmail people unless they give them something for free. That post was inspired because I had been at ITB for several days, and every booth I went to had a horror story about working with travel bloggers. And again, I addressed it head on because it is an issue, and our job is to educate people not to do those things. That's not an ethical practice, and that's not what they should do. So to answer your question, I think we are providing education to those newbie travel bloggers to teach them how to do things the right way. When it comes to that, you shouldn't just go on a trip simply because it's free. There should be some editorial motivation for that. There's no doubt not all of them will do it. There are experienced travel bloggers, famous travel bloggers, who do these same things. So it's not just new people. And again, when I say travel bloggers, there are travel writers who do these same things too and have done for years before we all found the internet. To answer your question about why we picked this tour operator, we did not pick this tour operator. We don't pick the tours that you see at TBEX. We pick the host city. The host city's bid on who will host TBEX. We select the city. Then the DMO tells the local industry, and different DMOs are operated differently. I don't know. I don't want to get too far in the weeds, but some of them are membership organizations and some of them are not. Cancun is not. So they send out a bulletin to the local industry and they say, hey, this event is coming to our town. Would you like to participate in this event in any way? They might submit to speak. They might say, yes, we'd like to offer a tour, or we'd like to offer somebody to stay at our hotel, or whatever it may be. And then they pass that on to us, and that's what constitutes the pre-TBEX tours. So it's really a reflection of whatever you see in pre-TBEX tours, no matter which city we go to. They're tours that the local industry has offered to our attendees. Sometimes a DMO will pick specific experiences, like in Costa Brava in years past, they planned tours where people went 3 or 4 or 5 different places all in a row as an experience. That was not the case here. It was just a tour operator who said, I want to offer this, and we just included it in the list of multiple other things that we offered for attendees.
There are more questions coming in. We'll just probably never be able to stem them, but it is now 20 minutes over time. I want to thank everyone for participating. Everybody here present: Allison Hood, the Rescue and Care Director for the Born Free Foundation; Chris Pitt, the Campaigns and Communications Manager for Care for the Wild International; Michael Huxley, the founder and editor of Bemused Backpacker; and our late but very welcome arrival, Rick Calvert, the CEO of, forget the exact name of the organization, but the organizing organization behind TBEX. Diana, thank you also for being present here. My name is Ethan Gelber. I represent Outbounding. For those of you who don't know Outbounding, we are a community-powered platform curating travel content excellence, finding, celebrating, distributing quality content about travel across the web. We are also trying to serve the role that I'm here today doing, which is to help facilitate conversations about ethics and practices and content creation, trying to find a better way forward for everybody. Thank you all. Thank you for being here. Thank you for discussing the topic. I'm sure the debate will continue. If you want to hang on, I will end the live broadcast, and then those of you who want to connect behind the scenes are very welcome to do so. Again, thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.